We'll have you leave that mic for these guys. Yeah. Applause for Vic. Anybody stepping up into a volunteer role to be on our board? Any other board members here this evening from the Bend Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors? Ex officio, I see a couple out there. There's another hand, another hand. It's like an auction out there. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We're very excited. 3 years ago, we did a state of the cannabis industry. I don't think we called it quite that at the time, to begin getting the temperature of what we were going to see out there. The Bend Chamber, as you know, we very much legally looked into the opportunities for folks who are in the industry to become members, made sure that it was in lawful agreement with our 501c6 status, and it is. And from that, we're very grateful. So tonight, this panel is really going to genuinely share with you a state of the cannabis industry as you know it today. There have been a number of conversations about the finances, the code, whether or not there would be a moratorium, all kinds of things out there. And we expect that this audience is going to have a number of good questions, so please be ready. But joining me tonight as my co-moderator, which I feel so blessed when I can bring on another expert, is Jennifer Clifton, and she's with Clifton Cannabis Law. So please welcome Jennifer Clifton tonight. She'll serve also as an expert as she goes around the room with some key points. But in our panel this evening, we've had a real honor. Chief Jim Porter, who's joining us tonight. Give him a huge round of applause. We're really excited today. One of the co-founders of Orachrome, so retail industry, is also on our board. So, and then we're very fortunate when the executive director of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, OLCC, was able to step up. And I would like to welcome Steve Marks, who's here with us tonight as well. Steve, do you want to point out your team too? Your whole team is here as well in some form.
So, Laura Shepard, our regional manager for OLCC.
Yeah.
Larry Brown, as inspector of marijuana side, and Steve Crowley, inspector of marijuana side.
I thought that was really wonderful of you to bring them all, and thank you for being here. And then also joining us, medical marijuana has been legal for a number of years in this state, as you know. And so, of course, it was wonderful when Andre Orso said he could step up and join us. He's the administrator with the Oregon Health Authority. So, a round of applause for Andre. Great group out there. I want to thank, of course, Miller Lumber and SunWest Builders who help us hold these monthly forums at a reasonable rate. Now we have some bites and goodies along with our beverages, so it's just getting better every month. And of course, our partners at Ventel, the Central Oregon Daily, the Source, Combined Communications, Horizon Broadcasting, the Bulletin, and of course, flip-flop sounds, because it's wonderful to have microphones. So much easier on all of us. But how about a big round of applause for our partners here at 10 Barrel? Give this. Great service, we just love it. So what is happening with medical and recreational marijuana? How does the marijuana black market impact the legal side of the industry? What are the impacts economically? I know a few data points that I've had, and I'm open to being corrected, is that after the state received its portion, that was part of how it was written up to be designated in certain areas, the city of Bend received somewhere around $800,000 to the general fund for this last year, and the county, I think it was around $480,000, but I could be wrong. Other key guests that are joining us tonight that could help us out with questions, and I hope we can go to. I want to welcome our sheriff, Shane Nelson, who's here with us in the back. I believe Laura Bright is here with us, but I didn't get to say hi on the way in. Are you here with us tonight, Laura Bright? Oh, there she is. Hi, Laura. Welcome, Laura. You can see your program. What's cool about Laura being here is she has her own engineering firm called Colbright Engineering, but she also has a DBA, Cannabis by Design, which really looks into the resources around it, sustainability, right? Water, lighting, fixtures, the whole 9 yards, right? So it'll be fun to hear from you. And I wasn't sure if Ross Lipson was able to join us this evening or not. Did he make it after all with the founder of Dutchie? Get Dutchie? No, well, you can look up the information on our website for sure. Well, with that, what I'd really like to do is start off with the slides that give us state of the cannabis industry from some data points that Steve Marks put together for us. Steve, how can I help your team get started on that and get you going and sharing? They've got it, so make sure you have a mic. Bray will be sharing this one, and however you're most comfortable. So thanks for kicking us off.
I'll just,
Oh, it's not on. Sounds like wow.
there we go. Perfect. So I'm Steve Marks, Executive Director of LCC. Great to be here. Been on our initial listening tour way back when. Some of you are recognized from that. So anyway, pleasure to be here. Just want to remind you that OLCC's new mission, I think it's perfect for what we do, is to support businesses, public safety, and community livability through education about marijuana and liquor laws, and through their and through its enforcement. And to me, that represents a lot of the issues you're going through in this community, right? You're growing businesses, you got public safety issues, you got community livability issues. So I want to take you through what has been created. So these are sales by month, and you can see that the highest month of total gross marijuana sales is $52 million. $52,500,000. So you can see in this last part of the year, we've been bouncing around over 42 million, between there and 52 million. Lots of money. Gross revenues, sales annually now match or near what liquor sales are, spirit sales in the world today. Now there's a big difference because we only get 17% of the revenue, plus if locals have like 3% of the revenue off this. So there's a big nexus on alcohol. Every 2 years we'll give the state, this time it'll be like $585 million for the next 2-year projected budget. This will give the state about, I think our projection, so I can't remember the future projection. For this biennium it's about $145 million. Next slide, please. So this tells you what's selling in Oregon. You see flower makes up the most of sales. Followed by growth all the way through on concentrates and extracts, and then edibles and tinctures are coming along. You know, processors are just getting in, the systems are evolving, and then others are trailing along. Total sales by customer types. You can see we have some medical patients that are using the OLCC system, and I think this is important because I think as we look to the future, I hope to see growth and more accessibility for medical patients in our retail. I think it should become more of a primary method for medical patients to get their product. We've been long talked, and Andre will talk about it, about how the systems are moving together. So I hope to get more medical friendly and more access to our retail. So there you are. Here's the big one, supply. It's the wet weight by month. So, you know, wet weight's a lot of weight, but that's in pounds. So if you look at that high one of the Croptober last year, 2.5 million. That's a lot of poundage. So we're really looking at what's happening to this marijuana in the system. Now it dries, dry weights, from wet weights to drier weight, can be down to 15% of its original weight. So we're going to look at products and otherwise. Well, let's look at the next slide before I go into that.
Can I ask you a question?
You can.
Okay, so we hear a lot about the oversupply in the market, and that's what we're hearing a lot about. So would you say, is there an oversupply of cannabis in the legal cannabis market?
So I'll answer this question the way I've answered it before in a few forums. I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of supply. And here is some of the inventory that's sitting out in our system that product has been converted to. What I know is that there's a lot of supply, and we're going to do a study and look at, we're charged with doing a study, and we're going to begin that process. And I think it's going to have 3 parts to it. One part is we're going to look at sort of the startup phase, but that's not really normalized. Businesses were building up. We didn't really have a full sales year. We didn't have the full production on that first outdoor harvest. It was extraordinarily bad weather. This last harvest, as you saw, was quite robust. You see we got the inventory here, so we're going to look intently at maybe from about May to May. So May last year back, and see what happened with all that product that went into the supply chain and what that looked like and describe that. And then, you know, as we're doing this work at the end of the year, we'll have also a focus on what our upcoming outdoor harvest produces. So we'll look at all that, describe it, and provide that data to everyone, the legislature, to the industry, the law enforcement, the communities, to be able to make judgments by yourself about what that all means. But certainly a lot. I would say what I've said before is, you know, the oversupply is not an issue as long as it stays in our system, right? If it stays in our system, that's fine. It's when it gets out and reaches our system, it becomes a problem for us, for the state, for the system, and for our regulated community. So with that, I'll leave it up. Those are the introductory stats.
I guess I have another question. If there's this oversupply that's putting pressure on the market, so prices are going down, right? And that's what I'm hearing. Have you seen licenses leave, like close down, become bankrupt?
So we've seen some close down that have turned in, I think just because they were ready to go out of business. Not too many. More frequently we see them consolidated or change of ownership where someone else will purchase them. But we've seen some go out of business. But not that many that just directly say because of the economics I'm leaving today, there haven't been that many surrenders.
I guess I'll ask another question. Jamie, you stop me if I need to, but I'm also hearing, and I'd be curious if anybody on the panel is hearing this, is that the oversupply causing the prices to go down is also causing people to get out of the legal market because the margins aren't there anymore. Have you guys heard that?
I've certainly been witness to the market changes. We're a vertically integrated business, so we do everything from production to process to wholesale to retail. And I was part of the rulemaking process. I was on the Rules Advisory Committee of the OLCC. I spent a lot of time with Steve and helping develop this system. And really, also legislatively, I was part of the Finance Committee for Measure 91. And our goal was to create a free market. And that's what we have here in Oregon, which is very unique. We have a capitalistic style approach to a business that also has a sales tax, and nobody said anything in the state of Oregon, which was kind of wild. And so we have this free market approach in a box. And so we have the ability for businesses to start, take their chances, compete, develop a brand, develop a company, develop products in something that was not possible before. And we're seeing large amounts of consolidation from the people that I talk to, which Steve just verified. And I think that we'll continue to see that over the next 6 to 18 months. Personally, I think we're going to see 65 to 70% consolidation. And that just has to do with an accelerated version of capitalism. And in Oregon, that's a very weird thing to discuss because we're, for the most part, fairly liberal in the way that we run our state. And as we transition from an illegal market to a legal market, the factors that are necessary to get rid of the illegal market include price reduction to compete with the illegal market, quality of product, quality of experience, consistent product, tested product, and safe places for people to be able to purchase it. And I have heard through the grapevines that there are a majority of people who are having a difficult time staying in a state of illegal cannabis growing. It doesn't make sense. And in fact, we should be promoting them to come into the legal system. And I think that that's one thing that the OLCC and the OHA have always been really good at. And that's, look, we're here, come apply. The barriers to entry are very minimal in the state of Oregon compared to other legal markets. And that's why I think we have seen such a huge influx of businesses, which then equals such a huge influx of product. And to your point, Steve, I think that we don't really know yet. And we're just really just started. And I think as another year of data comes out, the market will stabilize, businesses will stabilize, and we'll see everything change.
Great comments. And so Jennifer, I'm going to let each panelist at this point, because those were great questions, give their state of the cannabis industry. And I'd like to go to Chief Porter next. You came and spoke to our advocacy council recently. You have some tremendous information. I'd love to hear your state of the cannabis industry, Chief Porter.
Good evening. The sheriff and I have worked on this issue. What we're facing is the diversion of marijuana out of the lawful grows, what we believe out of medical marijuana grows, and other sources. Deschutes County was identified as one of the 6 top counties for diversion and illicit shipment of marijuana in the state of Oregon. That's worrisome news. And why is that worrisome news? There's a couple of reasons. From my perspective, what you see in the labs you hear about, they call the Honeywell labs, butane marijuana labs, which basically means you take processed dried marijuana, you push butane through it, and then as the butane vents off, you're left with the active ingredient, the oil, the THC, which is, it's concentrated, it's easier to ship, and there's a good market for it. So what happens is these illicit labs set up inside the city limits, which we saw in into March. They're not properly vetted, they're not licensed, they're not inspected, and they blow up. Literally lifted the roof off the garage, moved the garage 4 inches off the foundation, sent 2 people to HQ for burns, and by the grace of God, did not kill the 3-year-old who was in the house. This is what we're seeing. At the same time, within a couple of weeks, our local code team, our drug enforcement team, raids a lab on this outside bin, and they get 200 pounds of dried marijuana. It's just there getting ready to be processed through this butane system. You can imagine venting a room this size full of butane. All it takes is the light switch coming on, and you've got an explosion next door. The one that happened here in Bend is a high-density area. There's a couple blocks right over here. That is a challenge we have inside the city. When it comes in here and we don't have the ability right now to fight that. I don't want to say the war on drugs is the only way it would work. We don't have the ability to do the enforcement on it. Right now, we're still facing methamphetamine, which is killing 200 people a year in the state of Oregon. We're intercepting 30 and 40 pound shipments of methamphetamine directly related to cartels south of the California border coming into Bend. You don't see it in the paper because we don't talk about those major shipments, because we want to trace down the cartels in Mexico. The advertising doesn't work. We're seeing pound shipments on a regular basis of heroin. Bend is being targeted with pound shipments of heroin. We're at the point now where all of my cops are carrying the Narcan to bring these people back. I'm happy to say, a year ago, June, we rolled out the Narcan. All my officers carried on. The first day we rolled the Narcan out, we saved 2 lives. Got 2 people on overdose from opiates. To this point, we've deployed the Narcan on officers 20 times to save 18 people. That's how much our job is shifting. So while our narcotics investigators are trying to fight back the cartels that are shipping 40 pounds of meth at the same time, we're trying to address the heroin, which is killing people inside the city. We don't have the ability to interdict the major shipments. There's some good estimates out there. I think they're very good conservative estimates put together by the Oregon State Police and put together by the HIDA initiative that's around the President's Office of Drug Management Policy. Then, Deschutes County is designated as a high drug trafficking county. A lot of people don't know that. And there's a reason for it, because we see a lot of shipments through 97. We're now big enough that we're an endpoint delivery spot for major shipments. They work with the HIDA analysts and the state police analysts, and they come up with some pretty good conservative figures. Approximately 200, they believe, for their figures, and they're very conservative, is between 260,000 pounds and 1.8 million pounds of marijuana is being diverted out the back doors of grows. That's a lot of marijuana. Now, when you put that in money form, what does it mean money-wise? It means $4.7 billion to $9.4 billion a piece in marijuana that's being diverted. Now, what does that mean tax-wise? You multiply that by 20% of our tax, we're missing out about $940 million in taxes. That's the bottom figure. 1.8 billion on the top end tax money. Now, the other part of that, and my degree's in business management, along with associate's degree in criminal justice. The fairness of that to people who are doing it the right way, who are following the rules, who are building the infrastructure, who are following the licensing, and doing what OLCC says, how fair is that to them when people are creating that backdoor and shortcutting the system? So you've got the unfairness of those people doing it the right way. Then you've got the threat of people within the city of Bend, out in the county from these legal labs, and we're missing the tax money overall. Those are part of it that really we're looking at, and we're hoping to be able to use some of the marijuana tax money to hire additional investigators and partner with the sheriff. Commissioner Maney led the charge in that, contacted both of us, helped us with that. How do we do better enforcement? We need more bodies, and we're getting really close to that by using the marijuana tax money. So that's our solution, and that's our problem.
Thank you, Chief. It was an excellent setup. Monterey, we haven't had an opportunity to hear from you yet at all. Of course, having the medical industry, remind us how many years it's been around and set us up where we are today with the state of the industry.
Sure, thanks, Jamie. So, 1998, Oregon allowed medical marijuana. So we've had it for a long time, almost 20 years now. And 2013, we started registering dispensaries. So this is 2 years before Measure 91 passed. And then 2015, we had Measure 91. And then OHA was actually regulating the early start period. So it's the first 15 months of adult use cannabis sales were regulated through the OHA. And since then, we've seen a significant decrease in all of our registrants, whether they're patients, caregivers, growers, or grow sites. So since April of 2016, we've seen a decrease of 27% in our patient population. So we've gone down north of 70,000 in 2015 to 45,000 today. And we've reduced, and grow sites have reduced from about a high of 34,000 in 2015 to 18,000 approximately today. And specifically for Deschutes County, we still have about 863 registered medical marijuana grow sites in the county. And that can be anywhere from like 6 plants in someone's, I guess, basement, since outdoor growing isn't allowed within Deschutes County, to possibly upwards of 48 plants if they were grandfathered in since legalization. So I think, and then some other movements on the medical side, while we're seeing a reduction in all sorts of registrants, and we've seen a movement of all of our dispensaries, so we've had a height of 425 registered dispensaries at the beginning of an early start period. All but 15 have moved over to the OLCC side or gone out of business, and only 2 of those 15 probably actually operate. So there's 15 registrant holders, but they're probably not actual business. Another event after this session, legislative session, we've got enhanced tracking. So if you're a medical marijuana grower and you have 13 or more plants, or you have someone else growing plants for you, you'll have to get onto OLCC's CTS tracking system. So that should also help OHA and OLCC keep track of the medical product as it moves through the system.
So Hunter, you haven't had an opportunity to answer the question, but you didn't technically give your state of the cannabis industry. If you'd like to give us a little bit, then I'd like to go to the sheriff, if I could briefly.
Yeah, I mean, I live and breathe it. You know, I have a lot of friends in this industry. I'm a board member of the Oregon Cannabis Association. I'm also the chairman of the legislative committee for that association. I interact with the legislature a lot. And really, we're all just trying to figure it out. Quite frankly, the OLCC, I believe, and the OHA have had an unbelievable amount of work to do with a very limited amount of resources. I was in Salem last February 2017 with Steve, when he was publicly testifying, asking for the money that was owed to the OLCC from the legislature that they couldn't get. He's like, look, you know, we've got this system that's going on, it's going like crazy. We need more money, we need to hire people. And look what happened. Overloaded, hard to get a license process, hard to get people hired, hard to support the growth. The growth of this industry was astronomical. I've never seen anything like this. I was in a medical field before this. I used to sell orthopedic implants, total knees, total hips, Fortune 500 companies. And what has happened in the last 12 to 18 months for the legal cannabis industry is mind-blowing to me. It is a representation of something that I hold dear to my heart, and that is the old school American dream of wanting to try and do something and start a small business and have it be supported in an issue that in my opinion comes down to personal freedom and states' rights. And I love seeing the support for that. We're gonna need some more time to get it all figured out. The OLCC needs more resources. The OHA needs more resources. The Sheriff's Department needs more resources. And police needs more resources. The business owners need more resources. Try running a business when you're taxed at 70%. Try running a business when you can't go to a bank and get a business loan. Try running a business without a bank. It's really, really difficult. Now throw the fact that the OLCC has something brand new that they know nothing about, and they're relying on people to help them form rules. The rules change every 3 weeks. So running a business in an environment where you have no idea what is different from 3 weeks ago and what it's going to be like 3 weeks from today is damn near impossible, excuse my French. And I have to give a lot of credit to everybody who has taken every penny that they've ever made, every ounce of energy, every single tear, and every drop of blood that's gone out and tried to start a legal cannabis business. Because it's those people that have decided, look, I'm going to take the risk. I'm going to move from the medical market or from the illegal market or from never seeing a plant before in their life into a new system and try to create something really cool. And I think it's going to take us to have the conversations and the open dialogue, continue to have things like this in meetings where we can form and address issues that this industry continues to face. And that's something that Colorado has done really well. I think Colorado has seen that their tax was too high, they continue to lower it, they've stabilized, they've gone through what we've gone through. We're in the baby stages, in my opinion. And we have a lot of work to do, but at the end of the day, the industry is providing close to over 26,000 marijuana handler cards were applied for and given out. So think about that. 30,000 people registered. 30,000 potential new jobs in just the state of Oregon. Presidents run their whole campaign and things like that. So it's working, in my opinion. And it's really, really hard. It's a roller coaster. But in my opinion, it's working. We're seeing a reduction in illegal grows. Now, they're still prevalent. I don't disagree whatsoever. And it is very much an issue with our business. But it is working. We would all like to work a little bit quicker, but that's not possible. These things do take time. It's a natural progression. And that is something that I'm proud of being part of, and I look forward to being part of in the future. And I look forward to us changing rules on a national level. I don't know if you guys have seen what's going on politically, but you've got people like Chuck Schumer wanting to decriminalize the national. You've got Jeff Sessions now admitting that cannabis has medical benefits. Thank God, finally. I truly believe that cannabis has medical benefits, and I can't wait for our state and the OHP program to support our patients with cannabis for free underneath their insurance program. I can't wait for the OHA and the research license underneath the OLCC to work together with the OHP and to start studying these things and showing the rest of our country that, look, hey, here's a platform for us where we can reduce overhead on the medical program, we can reduce opioid abuse, we can reduce crime, we can provide safe access for people, we can provide economic stimulus, we can provide jobs, all from something that for a long time was considered illegal. And so I look forward to the progression of this industry. I look forward to collaborating and learning, because on a day-to-day basis, that's what I do. I make mistakes, I have success, I have failure, and I enjoy it. I wouldn't, there's no place I'd rather be than to legalize the cannabis industry. And so I thank you guys for showing up, and I'm always open to having conversations with anybody locally. And I love the interest that the Chamber of Commerce and the support that they've provided this industry here in Central Oregon. You guys have been absolutely fantastic, and I'm shocked. So I'd just like to say cheers to everyone.
Yeah. What helps when there's an industry like yourself, or excuse me, an organization like yourself, that I have heard at county meetings where you've got raving reviews. So that helps. I want to come to the sheriff here. One of the things that came up was the access to some data and how many inspectors are out there. And I heard, and help me, Sheriff Nelson, if I'm off track, but my understanding is you would like the ability to go in and help OHA and others with the medical grow operations and where those sites are. And there's some HIPAA barriers, but at the same time, they don't have enough inspectors on site, was the way I understood it. Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
First, sometimes these are difficult for me to go to. I have to take some Tums. I can be fully honest with you all. I want to recognize my great partner, the Chief. The Chief has more law enforcement experience and knows more about law enforcement than I will ever forget in my career. I really defer to him. He's been a huge supporter and a tremendous asset. I think there's a few elephants in the room when you talk about marijuana. The first element in the room is the fact that there's the element that it is still against federal law. And I bring that up only because it does complicate the situation. So when you talk about things like free market and business opportunity, we have to be respectful of that view. Look, I'm a law and order guy, all right? There's a right way to do things. It goes from the federal level down, not vice versa. But having said that, the other thing that I want to recognize is another elephant in the room, and that's the administrator and the executive director in a tough spot. Mr. Marks has 23 inspectors for 1,700 licensees and locations across the state. Now they work hard. They worked hard when they were trying to enforce the alcohol rules, right? And don't believe they had enough resources to do that either, but they tried very hard. And the administrator, I'll tell you what, it's no secret, I've requested, along with the district attorney, every medical marijuana grow address in the county. We have a difference of opinion there. And if that does come down to needing a legislative fix, then that's what should happen. The state of Oregon needs to show that they want to be a good partner in this. But one of the things that I always come down to is, listen, if we want to take a breath and see where we are, I agree with Hunter. That there are some responsible people trying to do the right thing out there. But the only way to tell is if we pause and we take a breath. To me, that means no new growth, no new licenses. All the information that I've had over the last 2 years is that there's an overproduction of marijuana. 2016, 3 times to 5 times the amount. 2017, 3 times the amount. And this information comes from our United States Attorney, Billy Williams, and then Seth Crawford, who's a retired LSU professor who now grows hemp, full disclosure. So the thing about it is we have a lot of different elements that go off of these things. The other thing that I tell you is it's difficult to have regulation if you don't have a robust enforcement arm. And these two gentlemen don't. The administrator has 5 inspectors for 20,000 locations, roughly. Okay, we've got to take a breath and pause. And then I saw Steve estimates there's going to be 2,000 up from 1,700 by the end of 2018. And I think the other thing to remember here is the Secretary of State audited this entire system and said there's not enough resources. And also pointed out some challenges with the computer system, this self-reporting system, that there's some problems and we need to work it out. So, I don't know if I answered your question. I always take a few liberties when I have the microphone. I work for you all, so I figure you would expect me to. Thanks.
I guess I have a question. I mean, it's interesting that you say that it's federal law because, and you say the federal goes from the top down. But as an attorney under constitutional law, I know that under the 10th Amendment, whatever isn't specifically delegated in the Constitution is reserved for the states. And so whether or not Oregon State wants to have legal cannabis business, it's within their state, they're not crossing state lines. So I would argue that, as Trump said, it's a states' rights issue. And the state of Oregon has legalized it. Do you have any comments on that, Steve?
Well, not specific to states' rights, but I've been on both sides of that issue, depending on what the issues are. So
I'm just a key audience member here. I want to respect that.
So Shane and I had the opportunity to do this in front of 13 U.S. attorneys when Billy Williams had his summit. He raised the very same, very real concerns about how we balance everything out. And I do regard that as our responsibility. And that, you know, we've been behind the curve, all of this experience of building up to put the system in place. Now, I really do believe we have a robust system. I don't think the cannabis tracking system issues pointed out by the Secretary of State's report are flaws, deep flaws in the system. I believe it works. It's one of the most pedantic human reporting systems that we use to monitor commerce in America. But very good points, and we need all our partners, and we've got to build up in terms of our enforcement capabilities. We're actually going to have more resources coming through our licensing revenue. OLCC is fee funded. Right now, we're at about 23, 24 people in the recreational program. We have, so the numbers I have are, we're at just shy of 19,000 overall licensees. That includes 23 that haven't yet paid for their licenses. We have a deficit and a backlog of about 1,554 licensees that are applied and somewhere in the process, maybe assigned, moving through the process. Some of those have a lux, some of those don't have a lux. So we still got a lot of work in our pipeline. And this issue of how do we have too much supply? Is it a free market in Oregon? And I think that was the conception of Oregon law, that anyone could enter, right? Its qualifications based, as long as you met all our requirements and you could pass a criminal background check, you get a license through the OLCC system. We're giving out a lot of licenses. We're taking on now tracking of the medical growers, which I think is a significant public safety event. That was all uncharted waters. We'll actually be able to add what they're producing to the slides next year when we start tracking it. That's a big accomplishment. That was part of moving towards these two systems put in place. But we have a long ways to go. We don't have all the enforcement that we need in the regions. We'll be building that up. I tell you, I'm going to have a very large budget ask for the next session. And we have a lot of IT issues along the way, not so much with the cannabis tracking system, which actually I had a demonstration yesterday of a company that's worked with tracking systems, work with banks, and they do amazing things out of those numbers in the system. On the wet weight, they tell us that their statistical algorithms, despite the fact that we can never tell how much wet weight goes to dry weight, you know, when we look at it, we debate it. Statistically, they have reliability within 2% because they have so much data in the system of what that conversion is. They can plug into our system and it only costs me 40 grand a month. So we're not quite ready to adopt them yet, but those are the kinds of algorithms work that we can put behind the number space that we're just beginning to create in the cannabis tracking system. I think it's going to be a really effective tool for the industry and for us. And as we move out of so much scrutiny maybe on grows in the future, this is an incredible system for the consumers of the products of Oregon. It really is a tracking system for safety as much as it is for public safety for health and safety. I'll stop there, but I appreciate our partnership and all of law enforcement. We've developed a routine here, elsewhere throughout the state of very seamless handoffs. When we figure out there's criminal activity or the potential of it, we pass it right along, it moves, law enforcement carries out their investigations before we move forward, and it works well for us. We're having a few too many of those events in Oregon, but it is a good relationship, and I appreciate it. And we need our partners. The legal system needs our law enforcement partners.
Absolutely, and I can see Chief Porter chomping at the bit.
I appreciate Jennifer's argument about the states' rights issue, but it's a slightly more complicated one. We have the Federal Controlled Substance Act, which is passed overwhelmingly by our Congress, which is passed, and it does control the development, productivity, shipment of controlled substances. There's no argument marijuana is a controlled substance. has an active ingredient, and my personal belief is there is medical marijuana, there's use for medical marijuana. I've seen it. It does work. There's use for the oils. I've seen it. I've lived in the Netherlands for 5 years where they've already had a lot of this discussion. I've worked and deployed with the Dutch police, so I've seen their side of it. And they have the same problem we have here, even though they have one yesterday. But the bottom line, it's not as clear as the state rights issue. There's also the Controlled Substance Act, which we have to also factor in, because the government does have rights, and I'm afraid to say it out loud, the shipment of firearms, controlled substance, those kind of things are clearly established federal issues beyond states' rights.
So other comments from the panelists, any of you'd like to take up?
I just wanted to say one thing, that I understand the sheriff's position on wanting to take a pause and try to figure out what's going on. My fear with that approach is that it inhibits the folks that are trying to become part of the legal system from applying and further perpetuating this legal activity. So for us to say, okay, well, here's this legal marketplace, but you know what, we have enough, so no more. I don't think that that's the right approach. I think that our legal system needs to be open to anybody who wants to apply for a legal production, processing, wholesale, retail license within the state of Oregon. If we do not allow people to legally operate in this industry, we will never, never, never stop illegal activity. It is going to take time, it is going to take more resources, but to put a pause on licensing, in my opinion, would be a very, very big mistake.
So just briefly, I want to follow up on what Hunter had to say. You know, our system was incredibly welcome. We went out and sought people to bring them into the system. We made it easy, we made it penetrable, and we got a lot of licensees into the system. Now, as Hunter and a lot of you know, we're running behind and have run behind significantly on our licensing process. We were at 6 months delays of, if you had a new application. The legislature was aware of that in this recent 18th session. That was okay with them. They wanted us to focus on renewals. They wanted us to focus on other things, and that lag time, we actually didn't get funded to close that lag time. Now, we have a lot of applications where we can't do the work. Now, I can't impose a moratorium from OLCC. There's some people who believe we have the power to just stop and shut it, and my commission can make that decision. It's arguable, but I don't believe that our commission can make that decision, and regardless of whether they could or not, that decision is probably made by the legislature. Now we're lining up the information for them to look at it, look at the penetration of products, look at the amount of supply, and we are so far behind in licensing that, I do think that the expectation that you put in a new license application with the OLCC that we're going to get to it anytime soon is a stretch. And so from a practical point of view, and because of the heat in this economy and others, the idea that we at least don't go further down the road is not unfathomable right now. It's a choice. It's available to us. We're going to be considered at OLCC for new license applications, but regardless of that, if we license up everyone in the queue, that's a lot of production. So we're going to consider what we do with new licenses, because I think we got to set the expectations right for those people that are coming in and wanting to make investments. And I can tell you the legislature is going to at least look at the issue of supply and numbers of licensees next session.
All right, I'd like to get another follow-up comment from the sheriff with regard to supply, something that he shared with me here.
And Steve, you and I talked about this before, but the way I interpret ORS 613, the whole supply versus demand subsection A, is that OLCC can stop issuing those permits if they feel that the production of marijuana is too great. I know we have a difference of opinion there, but it brings back to this point that if you truly believe that you can't, then my question is why? Why was that not a part of the law? Because I tell you, I have a hard time viewing this as a balanced concern for public safety and the industry, when it oftentimes appears the state of Oregon is heavily one-sided.
I'll give you a subjective hit as to why. I think people were concerned. So Rob Patridge, a DA in Klamath County, was our chair at the time we started this up. There was skepticism, I think, about and an unknown about how OLCC's commission would pursue licenses. I think the legislature wanted to make sure that the will of the people who voted it was there, and they wanted it to affirmatively go forward, and they didn't want to give us a stop on its ability. They wanted to retain that power instead of proffer it onto the OLCC. So I think that's what the substance, the way I think the law rolled out, and the way they did have us look at supply, but they never told us what to do with all that, right? And so we're bringing that information back to them so they can deal with it. It does create a point of debate for us to have here in Oregon about this system.
And one more just parting comment based on that is I just read a report, and it was mentioning about the number of Starbucks in the state of Oregon versus the number of marijuana retailers. And it didn't include medical, is the information I was getting. And I think it was about 520 marijuana retailers, and the combination of Starbucks and McDonald's was just 10 more than that total number. So just to put it in perspective when I'm talking about access and free business and free market, things like that.
You're right, that proliferation, I mean, that's part of, if you're a marijuana retailer in Oregon, so many are doing very well, but there are a lot of space.
Well, speaking about the industry and there being a lot out there, I'd like to go to Laura right now and go to a different angle for a minute about the state of the cannabis industry from your perspective as an engineer and what you're seeing out there. Welcome to Laura again.
Thank you for having me. Laura Bray, Fulbright Engineering. We're also doing business as Cannabis by Design. Just a brief history, we started accepting cannabis business in 2015. Right when it became legal, we had people come to us, they needed simple things, noise and odor letters to meet the county requirements. We also started doing design of HVAC systems and whatnot, and at that point, extraction facilities, that sort of thing. Since then, we have grown our cannabis business, and we're essentially trying to go national with it, which hence the Cannabis by Design part of the DBA. So what we've seen is what we're calling a growing up of the industry. When we first were getting people in our office, they were, I guess, stereotypically what you would expect. You know, the nice way to say would be farmers. You know, they were just trying to make a quick buck, though. A lot of them, they just thought they were going to do something quick, make some money. That was probably 2015 and into 2016. Since then, especially this year, I'd say end of 2017, 2018, definitely the projects have grown up in scale. There's a lot more bigger grows. Now, we're mainly involved in the indoor grow and also some of the greenhouses as it comes to the county letters. They're required to get letters from an engineer stating that they meet the code requirements for odor and noise. So on that, we're seeing that a lot of these small, quick buck people are no longer participating. That we've definitely had our fair share of not getting paid. When we do get paid, it's in cash. So we've learned to take payment in advance and things like that. But now we're getting, you know, 50,000, 60,000 square foot grows. So investors are starting to invest in this. It's people with more money. What that allows us to do on the engineering side, we've got real money backing it. We can push some more energy efficient systems, water efficient systems. We're working on educating the industry in terms of, okay, so these, you know, big dollar branding companies have come in and sold you that this is the best. Well, let us explain to you from an engineer's perspective why it's not. So we're taking what we've always been doing and applying it to a new industry that's been fed a lot of the bull and trying to educate. So that's kind of the state from our perspective. It's just a lot of growing up, people learning and trying to figure out where the market's going.
Any questions for Laura? Well, she's here amongst us. Yeah, I'm gonna go to Maggie for a quick question. Actually, Jen, you go to Maggie because I need to have time for Laura.
Laura, there's been what I think is a lot of misinformation about resource consumption, in particular water. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about cannabis compared to maybe some other agricultural crops to give us a point of comparison.
Yeah, thank you for that. So just to set the stage, I'm no expert on cannabis at all. I am an expert on HVAC systems, so I can speak from that perspective. What I do know just from some brief research is for outdoor grow, it appears it's no different from any other agricultural crop, and maybe even less water consumption. Somebody here can affirm or deny that. Okay, thank you. From an indoor grow perspective, I can tell you that across the board, except for maybe one special situation, everybody's collecting their condensate. So in indoor grow, you've got a lot of what we call latent load. It's the wet heat load, basically, and it's going to condense out of the process as we cool it. They're collecting all of that, sending it back, reusing that for their irrigation. It's by far one of the most water conservation, the best water conservation systems I've ever seen in terms of just because it makes sense for them. They're just not going to waste their resources that way.
I can kind of back that up. You know, one thing that's really cool to me about cannabis production and farming is that we're bringing methodology to farming that should be used more often. Our farm uses organic farming methods. We can't get a USDA certified organic stamp yet. I'm hoping for someday we can do that. It's one of those things we really strive for, with good old-fashioned hippies. And we are all about conservation. We actually drip feed, both indoor and outdoor. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with drip feed, but essentially instead of, for example, if you drive anywhere around Central Oregon and you look at an alfalfa field, you're looking at wheel lines or a pivot. We don't need to use a lot of water. For example, the plants that we grow, you know, that can be this tall from the table, they get about 1.5 gallons every other day. And that is fed by a little drip hose that goes drip, 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 drip for about 15 minutes. And so there's no waste even. The only time we have excess water, as Laura just said, is through our HVAC systems, which pulls the humidity out of the air. So I would say that the farming methods that are being used to cultivate cannabis on a commercial scale should be applied to the rest of our produce and farm practices, because we would conserve quite a bit of water. And for example, a field of hemp and its output compared to a field of hay, I'm going to make some people angry here, has a much more financial viability. I mean, you're looking at $260 a ton for hay, a lot more for hemp, and it also replenishes the soil. Don't need a pit line or a wheel line. And so, you know, we strive to work towards not only water efficiencies and electrical efficiencies. I paid for 3-phase power to be brought in. I would love to put 5 acres of solar on my 84-acre farm, but CEC doesn't have a program for it. So, you know, we are constantly trying to innovate and create efficiencies, because at the end of the day, in such a competitive market, it makes the most sense to get your cost per gram as low as possible. That's how you're going to succeed in the environment that we're facing today.
And on that, I'll just say that I can just about guarantee there is no waste, because we never see floor drains in these indoor grows. I mean, maybe I have once or twice, but there really is no waste concern. There's no extreme water usage. We did a lot of work here at 10 Barrel, and it's not even, it doesn't even compare. So it's probably closer to a residence than it is to anything else.
Wait, I have one more question for Laura. I mean, you're doing processing as well, so I'm sure you're seeing companies come in and have DHO processing that's dangerous, what kind of protocols do they have to go through to make sure that there aren't, and what do they do so that we don't have the situation that the chief was talking about?
Sure, yeah, those, what do they call, honeypot labs, honeywell labs. Those are, I've never seen one of those on a commercial scale. We do extraction labs. They're always closed extraction processes. We had one situation where a company came to us, and again, this was one of the first ones, to tell they didn't know what they were doing, and we told them, I sat down with them and I said, we cannot do your project because at the end of the day, this is my family's income on the line, go away. So it's very, very rare that you see any of that, and more it's becoming CO2. So there's butane hydrocarbon extraction. It can be more than butane, but oftentimes it's butane. And then there's, and that's used as a solid. And I'm no expert on the cannabis side of things, just on the HVAC side of things. And so the butane needs to be taken care of in a certain way from a heating ventilation perspective. And so we deal with that with spark-proof fans, spark-resistant fixtures in terms of lights and switches and that sort of thing. It's a very intensive engineering process that we go through with our electrical engineer as well. It's not taken lightly. It's a very, very serious thing. And the counties and the cities, they do not take it lightly either. It's a very serious thing. And then on the CO2 side, it's not an explosive concern. Also used as a solvent, by the way, but it is an asphyxiation hazard. And so there are other concerns there. And so we oftentimes have to have, well, all the time, we have to have sensors that will switch on if there is a leak. It's just very, very intensive engineering process, and that's nothing that you're going to do at home. It's going to have a professional engineer stamp on it.
Steve?
So I just want to talk a little bit about butane hash oil. Within our system, I'm not talking about illegal residential. It is very dangerous. We have good standards in our rules for closed loop systems. We reference the industrial standards, and then we hand it off an inspection, and we kind of have crossed over fire, life, and safety with the equipment inspection that needs to be done there. Now, we found ways to do these inspections in some communities. Some places are using third-party engineers to help the fire services sign off on our licensees, or potential licensees, because they don't really get to operate without that permit. But we have a flaw in our rule that attaches both those things. We're going to go back and work on fixing it because of the intense danger of butane hash oil. We had an explosion in Huntington. The licensee was burned in that and hurt in that accident and injury. It was human error in that case. It was ironic that his father was actually the fire chief that signed off on the permit. And the permit, I think, was fine. They did a reasonable job of looking at it. But we're going to have to follow up on all of that and put more scrutiny. If we do this, I have several licensees that won't be able to move forward for a time. And there are several communities in Oregon where you can't get consistent inspections. This isn't one of them. But there are several where we can't get very good technical inspections of the highly technical processes and equipment they need to make sure that the conditions are safe where they're doing this process. CO2 is much more, less volatile. Some people have suggested at times that we only allow that in our system. That wasn't a part of our rulemaking. And part of that process was if we have a good legal system and a safe way to do it in the legal side, the impetus for these residential using propane or butane hash cans to, spray out and extract it in a condo or their apartment goes down. That problem, I hope our system helps address, but I'm really concerned about folks in our communities that are still processing marijuana illegally, residentially, it's a danger to all of us. And it's an issue that the marijuana community, the public safety community, and all of us that care about the system need to figure out a way to address. I'm going to have a conversation with the Oregon Chiefs of Police Association, Director Kevin Campbell, with Rob Bovet, and I want to establish a reward program for people who will give information about folks that are doing home-based extractions of butane hash oil. I don't know that I couldn't create it myself, so we didn't do it yet, but I think we need to do something like that in the state of Oregon to see if we can get anyone reported in on this.
I see Chief wants to respond.
Yeah, I've been around long enough. This is not my first interaction with illicit laboratories. I was here for the 80s with the methamphetamine laboratories, through the 90s. Disassembled a lot of them, created a lot of them. I know that the only successful method we put into the lab is remove the precursors, or what they need to produce what they're doing. What they need is butane, which we'll never be able to control, and raw large amounts of marijuana. That's how we push the amphetamine labs out. We went after the precursors. We stopped them coming into the U.S. We stopped them at the border. We stopped them being imported from China and India. And that's somewhere we're going to be able to attack the illicit labs, is by including the diverted marijuana into those labs. So, and I appreciate we're going to try to incentivize it. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is stopping the diversion of the overgrowth of marijuana from a simple cops perspective.
Interesting feedback. I want to hop out to the audience for some questions. Jennifer, do you have anything burning as well, but from what we've had here based on our conversations and prep? Do you want to say briefly a little bit about that sentence you told me about smell and hemp? Just to make it really clear for people so we don't go down that trail.
There's been a lot of discussion about cannabis in the county and how we're going to regulate and have preschool time, place, and manner regulations for it. And so it's just interesting because with the growing hemp industry, right now, actually, to be honest with you, most of the clients I'm seeing are clients that are getting into hemp. And hemp is like blueberries or strawberries, and you can grow as much as you want, and nobody talks about use of resources, nobody talks about the smell, and it's essentially the same plant, it just has a different potency. So it's just kind of interesting. If people are complaining about the smell, sometimes it could be that they have hemp next door, because obviously the legal cannabis companies, they can't have any smell.
Right, exactly. I thought that was a really good point of clarification. There's a gentleman over on your side of the room. Jen, if you'd like to go to him and hold the mic and have him, go ahead.
My only question was, wouldn't it be easier to control the flow of the butane from large sellers like Oxart or other companies like that, just to add on to also controlling the extra flow of marijuana out of the legal industry?
Who would like to answer that up here? Who'd like to take a shot? And Sheriff, you're welcome too.
I don't think so. I mean, it's sold everywhere. There's a great deal of people who are now homeless who survive by maintaining stoves and cooking. I mean, look at the camping market. It's we looked at that. I mean, everyone carries it from the 7-Eleven to the Fred Meyer's. And how do you determine what is a lawful amount? We'll end up like we did with the pre-drug lab things, where you had people going from drugstore to drugstore, like 5 or 6 Sudafeds, a little bit, and then they end up there.
All right. Jim Cook?
You've talked about inspections or lack of inspections. Could anyone up there give us an idea of, in Deschutes County, how many inspections we're having, how often a facility can expect to be inspected, what kind of inspections actually occur?
I can say from a personal note, real quick, I'm very familiar with Larry Brown, who has been to our farm, I don't know, close to a dozen times over the last year and a half. And I don't know how many times to the retail store. You know, we keep a complete open book. We're always open to the OLCC. They call, and if we're there, or if not, they can come. I think that, you know, again, we need more folks as more licenses come into play, but you're talking about nine licensed businesses and operating OLCC businesses in Deschutes County. 9. Now, there's a lot more retail in Bend, close to 30. But 9, again, 9 operating, from what I understand. Maybe now it's 10 or 11. So, Larry has had the opportunity to be through our facility, same with Laura, same with the Sheriff's Department's deputies who were having a blast, taking pictures, having a great time, getting to know the facilities so that we could have a relationship. And I look forward to continuing that type of relationship with both the Bend Police Force, the Sheriff's Department, and the OLCC. That's what we want. We want people to come and see our facility. And if we're making a mistake, tell us.
Steve,
If we need to do something different, let us know.
Steve, you had a comment?
So I'm going to let Larry follow up on that specifically, but before anyone's licensed, we always inspect. Here's our ratio that we're funded on, just so you have an idea. The ratio that we had this biennium is, on the recreational side, 1 inspector per 100 licenses. Next biennium, we're proposing to move that down to maybe 1 per 80, maybe even 1 per 70. Here you happen to enjoy, I think, a little better ratio. Larry can tell you about that.
Now, we have a better ratio than what Steve was talking about, but basically the pre-licensing inspections, between those, and then anytime you make a change, like if Hunter adds a greenhouse, I have to go back out and do another inspection, or if those are a complaint. So those are about the 3 times I can go out to somebody's place and actually do an inspection. I would love to get to the point where I can go out and do more preventative inspections, where I have time just to call Hunter or whoever up and go, hey, I'm going to be in the area, let's go through what you're doing, you know, and making sure he's tracking everything and everything's on board kind of deal, but we don't have the staff to really do the preventative type inspections yet.
Is there a chance, Mr. Cook, that you're also talking about, and I want to come to you, Andre, the medical side, where there are how many inspectors for how many operations, Andre?
So we have 5 compliance specialists, 6 including the compliance manager for the entire state of Oregon. There are 863 medical grow sites just in Deschutes County alone. Now the vast majority of those are going to be 6 plants, right? And every citizen in Oregon can legally grow 4 plants as long as they keep it within the curtilage of their home, keep it out of public view. So, you know, the state of Oregon had to set kind of a limit on what's tolerable. So 4 to 6 plants, private citizen has 4 plants, a medical patient has 6 plants. Is that really a diversion risk? I don't know. It could be if a bunch of patients get together and put supply together. But we do have resource constraints. We don't do inspections because we have 28,000 medical grow sites. I mean, we don't do inspections as they're licensed because any patient can grow for themselves or just assign a caregiver to grow for them. But we do perform inspections around harvest time. We do look at larger outdoor medical sites, so those are primarily going to be in Southern Oregon. And then we do focus on complaint-based inspections. So if we have neighbors that are not happy about activity and it's suspected that there's a medical grow site, we'll look into that. We often work with law enforcement on those types of situations. We have a great relationship with OSP. Keep in mind, we're an administrative agency, we're not a law enforcement agency, so we do have a lot of limitations on where we can go when we do search. It has to be within the confines of administrative search. So it's very difficult to get a handle on illegal activity from OHA's perspective. And you know, we try our best and we do follow up on the complaints and livability concerns, and we do try to partner with law enforcement when we do go out and do those inspections.
Thank you. Question?
I have a question about, okay, we say like, let's say we are celebrating 2-year anniversary from today, and then we form a really great cannabis industry. So how did we do? That's the first question. It's like we are actually celebrating 2-year anniversary of forming a great cannabis industry. So how did we do? It's like we're looking back from future to the past. So how do we all do together? And the second question is,
Go ahead and paraphrase it. How did the cannabis industry do in forming the legal market over the last 2 years?
I mean, I'll give my 2 cents. You know, it's been a really tough road. You know, you have a brand new industry out of nowhere. And I think that overall we've done a good job. Everybody. I think it's apparent that there are issues we need to address, and we need to put resources to help those issues. And that, no matter what industry you're in or what new opportunity there is going to take time. And so as we are collecting all of this data and now being able to understand what's going on, we can start to address those things. But, you know, for taking a group of people, and I mean, how many people are on that rack? 25 people in a room. 15 natural members, ranging from doctors to folks getting into the industry, to police, to the Department of Justice, to the OLCC. You know, I think we put together something that will be looked back on as a very successful model. And I think we're just going through the growing pains. If you look at legislation that's being put together for further states to legalize, such as California, they're modeling systems after what we've done. And yes, there are bumps in the road, but I know that everybody from the OLCC to folks within the industry, the OHA, and the police force and the legislature are doing their best. So I would say overall, yeah, there's some issues, but I think we've done something really special.
Yeah, when you hear Andre talk about marijuana growth, and I'll tell you, I'm a little dated in my field experience. I've been chief for 4.5 years. But my experience was, I very seldom found a medical marijuana grower that only had one grow program. Only had 6 plants. We go into do Brays, and we find them growing from 4 to 6 people times 6 plants. Then you multiply that by the immature plants that they have coming out. So they have cycles going. It's not the people who are doing it right that's our issue. It isn't. It's the ones who, like I said before, are buying licenses for getting inspections. It's the medical marijuana side, which I think numerically you can make an argument of, that's where your illicit marijuana is coming from. Because they don't have the ability to inspect it. They have no law enforcement ability. And we have this problem of HIPAA and the interpretation of the medical marijuana law. That's our issue, not the folks who are doing it right.
I beg your opinion, I can tag that out a little bit. I know HIPAA's been thrown out a lot. HIPAA is a federal law. Marijuana is illegal federally. HIPAA does not apply to medical marijuana patients. But we do have state laws that protect confidentiality. And that's what Sheriff Nelson and DA Hummel and OHA, we have a discussion. We have a very lively discussion on the mechanics of how we can verify grow sites. OHA wants to help law enforcement. I mean, it's not in OHA's best interest whatsoever as an executive branch agency to confound law enforcement. We want to be as helpful as we can, but we want to be within the bounds of state law. To that, we've asked the Attorney General to look into that matter and how we can best verify grow sites for each other so we can move forward and get those bad actors out of the medical system. Medical system, it's not an economic model anymore. It's a compassionate model. Hopefully there's some research later on. It does, have some potential benefits. And if you want to make money, you can get a OLCC license and compete with everybody else. Jumping back a little bit to inspections, with getting these larger medical grow sites onto the metric system, it'll allow us to do compliance enforcement in new ways. So OLCC monitors metric. If they notice that there's some inconsistencies in the system with the medical marijuana registrant, they have the authority to go in and start an investigation. They can turn that data over to us, and then we can administratively pursue revoking that person's registration, and then if need be, turn them over to law enforcement. So I think, and this is just new legislation that came out in 2018, between 2015 and 18, the sessions are going together. Because the industry and the regulatory structure is progressing. It's going through growing changes, but the legislature gets back together every year and tweaks some things and makes some improvements so that the industry can survive and that we balance the needs of public safety too.
And I'd like to just comment a little bit further. I think we're seeing this transition, and it's happening as quickly as it possibly can, from folks that, 1998 was when the law changed, right? So you had folks that were getting into the medical cannabis initiative at first as very compassionate folks and people very happy about some form of legalization, and a group of individuals that have been forced underground to do something for a very long time. And you saw this interesting transition where the medical system became more of a business. And yes, we had dispensaries and we had people who grew for patients that didn't produce their product at the dispensaries, but I would say that a majority of the medical industry was a business. And I have publicly commented on this in Salem. And I had some interactions with the legislature. They opened dialogue with me, and it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, in that, look, maybe 80 to 85% of the medical industry were really folks excited about having the opportunity to run a legal cannabis business. Now, that 15–20% of folks that grew cannabis for people who use it medicinally, I have a very soft spot in my heart for it because I use it medicinally. My father beat cancer last year using it medicinally, and I think it has all sorts of wonderful opportunities to help reduce our overhead on the normal medical market. And when I was in Salem, my suggestion to the Oversupply was, look, let's take the Oregon Health Plan and the Oregon Health Authority and the research license underneath the OLCC, and let's start a program. Let's buy all that excess cannabis off of the growers so it doesn't leave state lines, and we can control it. Let's offer people, let's just start with chronic pain. Let's offer people the opportunity to choose a cannabis product instead of a narcotic product, an opioid for their pain, for chronic pain. And then let's study it, and let's see how much money the OHP program saves on a monthly basis, because they don't have to buy opioids from a pharmaceutical company. Let's just start there.
What was the response to that?
Crickets. Crickets. Not a word. Not a damn word. Which was sad. But at the same time, I had the opportunity to say what I wanted to say and have it be recorded and get the reaction that I wanted. Because they know, and I would say most people who are logical know that that is the solution. Now, how do we get there? I don't know. Federal change. They're afraid of losing federal dollars. Our state would be in a really bad place if we lost federal funding for all of our programs. And until something happens federally, they're probably not going to make that change. But like I said earlier, there's things happening on a national level that I didn't think would happen as quickly as they have. And the progression is taking place at an alarming rate. And it's one of those things where, is it too fast? Do the pharmaceutical companies take over this whole thing and ruin the whole thing? Or is it a combination of business and pharmaceutical companies and plant-based medicine that reduces the overhead on our medical system, which allows our country to have insurance for everybody and be able to afford it? Who knows? But I think it's ridiculous that we're not trying. And that we don't take the opportunity to show everybody.
That's the best thing that's been said tonight.
So we have time for just a couple more questions. This gentleman in the back, it looks like you have somebody, everybody's going to have to keep their answers succinct, very succinct. If you could, please stand.
Hi, Ricky Nelson, I'm the defense attorney here in town at Baxter and Carter. This is probably a two-part question for Andre and then Shane Nelson. First off, I know we have a current situation, I guess you could say, in Deschutes County where the sheriff's office and county have been requesting the addresses of all medical grows via the zip drive. Andre, could you potentially give any comment to concerned medical patients regarding that? And then additionally, the second part would be to Shane Nelson. Considering the state of Oregon law that possession of a medical marijuana license does not give a law enforcement officer probable cause to search an individual, isn't this just a backdoor attempt to, I guess, get in and search those facilities when Oregon law and the judicial system has said that you can't?
Andre, keep it as brief as you can, please.
Sure. So we do have state law that protects confidentiality of the addresses of medical marijuana growers. We do have a mechanism for law enforcement to verify if a grow site is registered with us or not. I think the disagreement with OHA and Deschutes County is the mechanism of verification at this point in time. So what we've been advised by DOJ is that it's a situation where maybe an officer has a reasonable suspicion that the law is being broken. They call up OHA and say, hey, is 123 Elm Street registered as a medical marijuana grow site? We give them a yes or no, and that's the end of the conversation. The officer could also say, look, I really think you guys need to take a look at this site. They might be legal, but I think they have too many plants. Then we would discuss with law enforcement how to go out there, count the plants, check the patient cards, and make sure that they're in compliance. As far as handing over an entire list of medical marijuana patients or grow sites to any law enforcement agency, it hasn't been done before, and Director Allen has asked the Attorney General to weigh in and give an opinion on the matter.
And the part of the question to me, and I appreciate it, I don't consider it a back door. I consider it a legal means so that I can ensure the public safety of the county. So I appreciate the question. I think when you start having discussions about land use issues, and we didn't even get to skim the surface on the livability aspect of marijuana. I mean, I hear from the people that I work for on a daily basis about not wanting to live next to these grows, and I appreciate Jennifer's comment, but there's some hemp grows and marijuana grows that I don't hear about. They're in industrial complexes, or they're so far buried into farmland that they don't bother people. So there is a livability issue aspect to all of this, but no, I don't consider it a back door. I consider it a legal means so that I can ensure the public safety of the county.
So Brian had a question over here.
Real quick, for Chief Potter, has there been any measurable effect on drug related? Order. Thank you. For any measurable effect on drug-related crime since marijuana/cannabis has been legalized, either positive or negative?
I didn't quite hear the question, so.
You want to know if there's any measurable effects with the marijuana we see that's been legalized? Any measurable criminal effects, is what you're saying? No. We don't have data that, we have not been able to actually, this is not terrible, field enough police officers to adequately enforce the DUI laws. And we just use DUI, driving influence of intoxicants, to really get sampling and see if that's increased. But there isn't a measurable amount of the labs increases. We had two together in 2017, we only had 2 labs. We already in the first quarter of this year had 2 labs already. So I guess you could quantify that as a measurable increase. It's a little weak on data because we're only talking about a very small sampling over a 2-year period, so I would not want to stand up and scream about it, but it's there for you to decide.
I just wanted to make one more point. You mentioned 27,000 marijuana handlers permits passed out. That's not even taking into consideration the ancillary businesses. So a lot of my clients are actually software companies, engineering companies, professional services, and we formed a group called Celebrate Cannabis just to spotlight the positive impact that the cannabis has had in Central Oregon. And having survived the recession as a single mom, I can tell you that having means to actually provide for my family and supporting the cannabis industry means a lot to me. And I see how hard these entrepreneurs work to go up this regulatory hill. So, I mean, it's a huge, huge industry, and it's growing faster than the .com, and there's a lot of opportunity, and I trust the regulators to put in place something that will work for the future. So,
how about a round of applause to Jennifer for being our co-moderator this week? And a huge round of applause to our panelists, indeed. Sheriff Bills as well for you being here, and to Laura and all of you. You did a wonderful job. So real quick, before we go, we'll have a survey that gets out to you. I'd like to know by a quick show of hands, how many of you in the room are either alumni of Leadership Bend or in Leadership Bend? Hold on. Let's see you. Yeah! I just want to say, Leadership Bend is celebrating 20, so are you, Sheriff. Okay, I didn't look, my bad. Yes. 25 years of amazing individuals throughout this community who've gone on to be our leaders in our succession planning and our pillars. And we are holding a community-wide celebration on Tuesday, May 22nd at the Deschutes near Currents Restaurant. And we would love all of you to join us. You can find more information online at the Mint Chamber. Thank you for joining these forums. Next month is the State of the City address, which will be really interesting. Parlays. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy the night.